back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
So how was it other than bringing back a sickness?
Oh my gosh, just my sinuses. I always have sinus problems. It was fun. My nieces, like I said, are 4 and 8 and going on 16.
Already?
Yeah, already. But it was a lot of fun. I love seeing them. It was one of their birthdays, so we went on a Target shopping spree.
Oh my. That's like a
While
dream.
They still want to see me, I'll do it.
They'll want to see you forever. You're like
yeah, because I take them shopping at Target. That's what they want to see me. Yeah, I'm the cool aunt that lets them do stuff.
You're like, oh,
yeah, but
they just get away with shit. Like,
yeah, it was cold the whole time I was there. I loved it.
It was cold here though, dude.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. It's different there.
You missed it. You missed it.
It was fun.
That's good.
I'm glad to be back, but it was fun.
You were missed. We had so last week we missed a week. We were supposed to be back last week, but
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, guys.
Sick. You can hear it in her voice.
I've had all kinds of steroid shots and sprays and antibiotics, and it's just my sinuses now. So I don't know.
You sound like a totally different person.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's really funny. Like if people listen, like, who is that?
It's the new host.
It's the new host.
I'm actually just a clone.
So before you showed up, I had a bit of a I don't know if it was an anxiety attack or I don't know what it was. I just was sitting there and I just looked at Jason, and I was just trying to eat and I just couldn't even bring myself to move my hands to put the food in my mouth.
Oh no.
It was overwhelming. And so I just got up and I walked away, he saw me and he followed me in, and he goes, do you want me to do the show tonight? And I was like,
you should have said yes.
I said yes. And I was really serious. I go, yeah. And he was like, do you have a script? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going to add a few things. I'm going to air my grievances. But you'll hear it. You'll hear it in the morning. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to say? What are your grievances? He was like, ghosts, aliens don't exist.
We missed such a golden opportunity to have the wizard host this show.
I told him to.
That would have been beautiful.
I did not. You didn't even
hesitate. You're like, yes.
Yes. Go do it. I'm like, that would be freaking fantastic. Go. And he was like, you know what else? Bigfoot doesn't exist. And it was just like, okay. I was like, what about the Alaskan Triangle, huh? A plane just crashed there, huh? He was like, doesn't exist. It's not real. So,
well, wizards aren't real either, but we still believe in him.
We believe in wizards. That's funny. I'm going to tell him you said that. Okay. He's going to hear it.
I mean, yeah.
He's going to hear it.
Well, does he listen to us? No, he doesn't believe in what we say.
He doesn't. He listens to the beginning and he's like, you guys are ridiculous.
Wow. Everyone else just loves us. And I think we're hilarious. So,
okay, dear listeners, we'll call each other and be like, you're so funny.
Did you listen to our episode? You were hilarious.
Oh man. And just think, my kids will listen to this when I'm dead. You know what I mean? Like what was mom like? Oh dear. Well, I don't have to worry about that. I know.
Maybe my nieces, but
oh yeah, your nieces.
They're very weird in their own right. So
yeah, I mean, my kids are weird too. That's all right. That's all right. Anderson and I were both singing a song, and after we finished singing it, I was like, "We're a lot alike, huh?" He goes, "Yep." I said, "I'm sorry." Okay, all right. That's enough. That's enough of us.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot we were here for a podcast.
I know I know everybody wants to hear about our lives.
I'm just sit here and drink.
What are you drinking?
Oh, one of those strawberry kiwis ciders from St. Arnold's that you got me.
Oh, great.
So good still.
I'm glad.
Hasn't changed since the first time I had it. It's delicious. So fresh, so fruity.
So fresh,
That's
so
what
fruity.
This is the most saintly cider.
Well, I've got
so
St. Arnold's art car tonight. What?
Let's go St. Arnold's.
So the St. Arnold's night. Okay, so I'm just gonna get on with my story because what the fuck else are we gonna do? So this was supposed to be around Valentine's Day, so we were gonna be like a few days after Valentine's. You know
I'm
what
sorry.
I mean. So, no, it's okay.
I screwed it all up.
So in keeping with the theme of that week, so this is why it's a little it's a little off now. But so when I was just kind of looking things up about things that happened on Valentine's Day, this had like one event in the whole story about Valentine's Day. So really, it's not really keeping with the theme anyway, but one part takes place. Anyway. Okay. So I guess it counts. Anyway. But when I found the story, I knew I had to tell it because I had never heard of this person.
Okay.
Okay. So tonight I'm going to be introducing you to Scott Lee Kimball. And now I need to have a drink. Because he's just so horrible.
Oh, okay.
So Scott Kimball has gone by other names. He has named himself given himself the name of Hannibal.
Alrighty.
Right. After, well, the great man Hannibal Lecter. And other names that were assigned to him, like Joe Snitch. So tonight you'll all probably just want to refer to him as that fucking asshole. And I'm just going to refer to him as Scott Kimball for now.
Got it.
You're going to get it. So as we're talking about Scott Lee Kimball, so he was a career con man turned FBI informant turned serial killer.
Oh, what an interesting trajectory.
It is an interesting trajectory. He somehow managed to convince the actual government that he was a trustworthy guy.
I mean, is that hard to do?
I guess not. All while preying on young women and even his own uncle. It's a story that is I don't know that it'll make you as mad as the T. Colin Davis one, but it'll definitely be like, ooh, it'll make you scream like, why didn't anyone stop him sooner?
Okay.
Like,
really. I feel that way about most of your stories.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So buckle up. This case has some full of fake identities and money scams and disappearing victims and an absolute failure of the justice system. So let's get into it. All right. So early life. Let's start with the basics. Kimball was born in Boulder, Colorado in 1966. Early childhood was okay. Nothing that anyone ever wrote was, those beginning years, as a baby and all of that. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing really big. But when he was about 10, his mother, Barb, came out as a lesbian, and that led to their parents' divorce. His father, Virgil, left the state and he remarried. And at that point, that's when things sort of took a turn for Scott. And as he moved into that early adolescence, he started to get in trouble. He started to really act out. And he had his first encounter with the police when they were called to his house after he fired a gun out of the window at a neighbor's house.
Oh my goodness.
So right off the bat, boom. So not a good start to that young man's life. So Kimball and his younger brother, Brett, took refuge at their grandmother's mobile home. And a neighbor of hers, his name was Theodore Payton, took advantage of the situation and began to sexually abuse both of them at the cabin he owned in Nederland, Colorado. It's awful. It's an awful thing that happened to him. Payton's abuse progressed from having Kimball touch him to then photographing him and photographing him naked and tying him up and raping him and recording all of it on film. That's enough to
see, this is one of those things where I feel bad for them. And then you're going to tell me all this awful stuff he did.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard for me not to feel bad for him.
But I guess it comes back to that idea, like, we're all responsible for our choices, right? And so I don't know, like, yes, there shouldn't be a statute of limitations on the horrific things that happen to him, and he's gonna hold that. I know, as a victim of sexual assault as a child, like, I know it stays with you.
Yeah.
And it impacts it impacts your whole life. Yeah. It really, really does. But I didn't murder anybody.
I mean, yet. You're still young.
Okay. That's true. I talked too soon. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, to be fair, the wizard's not here.
I know.
I have not seen him at all since I've been here. So
He was giving me lip. He was talking about ghosts not being real, you know.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So to be fair, I don't know that you're not a murderer. Anyways, sorry. I'll shut up.
and the audience doesn't know if you didn't help me clean it up because you would. So I mean
you know.
you know. Okay. Anyway, so sorry. I'm not making light.
Yes, I'm not making light.
I'm not making light. I do know it's hard. Like you listen, he was a child.
It's very hard to not have sympathy for someone who's been through that, especially if you've been through something similar. It's really hard to not feel bad for him.
In that moment, and at this age, at this point in his life, oh my God.
Yeah.
That man deserved to have
was it
his
him
penis
and his brother?
But it progressed more for what it seems like is that it progressed more for Scott than it did for his brother. I mean, that man deserved to die in my opinion. Like string him up, you know, awful. Yeah. I mean, anyway, okay. So, Theodore Payton, threatened to kill his father, who lived in Montana if he had told anyone. So he was being protective, and so he didn't. He continued to abuse Kimball, Scott, when he returned, would return to Boulder on the weekends. And after he had moved to Hamilton, Montana to attend high school and live with his father and brother. So every time he would return home, it would happen again. The abuse ended when Kimball was 23. And this is when he shot himself in the head in a suicide attempt.
Oh my gosh.
The bullet glanced off his skull. That's the quote. But the wound, which left a visible scar on his forehead, was severe enough that he was in critical condition for several days. A cousin, Ed Coet, C-O-E-T, remarked that Kimball came out of the experience changed, as if he had lost his conscience. That's the, in quotes, lost his conscience. So like he, at that point, when he woke up, he was like, fuck it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no right or wrong anymore. Like it is what it is. Right. Afterwards, Scott and several other boys whom Payton had molested reported him to the Boulder police. So that's awesome. Great. Good for him.
Yeah.
Payton was arrested, convicted on 7 counts of sexually assaulting a child, and he went to jail. Kimball continued to feel a deep sense of shame, less of a man for it. That's very common. And that was according to a former girlfriend. Like, how could I have let that happen? And am I gay? Or, there's so many things that come, like, did I ask for it? Did I,
yeah.
For me, it felt like I must be a magnet, like there must be something wrong with me because it happened. And so I can understand that. So Scott wrote a letter to the judge begging him to sentence Payton to additional prison time, stating, quote, "He has denied me my right to a normal, healthy, innocent childhood. He has damaged my life forever." And when asked about the abuse and its effect on him in 2010, Payton said only that it was a long time ago. What? It still bothers him?
Yeah.
Aren't you over it yet? That's what was said to me. Aren't you over it yet? Criminal career. All right, so here we go. He starts to get going. So Kimball had already turned to nonviolent crime, and it was usually fraud when he was about 22. So at around the age of 22, he was convicted of passing bad checks. So his first felony was in Montana. Back in Colorado, he did some B&Es, some breaking and entering. Mm-hmm. He burglarized houses. Montana also charged him with running an illegal hunting outfitting business. So he was kind of like, it was all fraud and theft and nothing violent.
Yeah.
Right. He got married. After a brief first marriage failed, he married Larissa Hence in 1993 and moved with her to Spokane, Washington, where they had 2 sons before divorcing in 1997. She recalls that the process servers were frequent visitors to her house, as Kimball was running scams in the logging industry, and those who partnered with him were cheated and would often use legal means to recover their money. He always had an excuse, she recalled. It was never his fault. So all these things, so people were always showing up.
Yeah.
They were always serving him with papers all the time.
While they were married?
While they were married. And so she was just like, Jesus Christ, why do you keep getting sued? So the only way that they could recoup their money was to sue him. And so it was it was never his fault. There was always something going on. And you know how narcissists are. Yeah. When it's good, it's because of me. When it's bad, it's not my fault. Somebody else's fault. So among those that Kimball victimized in his schemes were his dentists and the bishops at the church.
What? Okay.
Yeah. So, hence, his wife, their relationship continued for another 2 years after the divorce, ending when she accused him of rape. And Kimball told police she was trying to secure full custody of their sons. And after she failed a lie detector test, no charges were filed. This breaks my heart. So they just didn't believe her because she failed the polygraph. Which is not even admissible in court because it's faulty. So anyway, prosecutors also saw the case as complicated since the couple had continued to have consensual sex after the divorce. And then, it was just that.
Yeah. That is confusing.
That is confusing.
I mean, I'm not saying she's lying. I'm just saying that would be hard to be in that position when you were continuing it after the divorce. How do
you get a conviction on the
I can't say it. So I don't know what we're trying to say.
Shit. I don't even know how to say it now.
I'm absolutely not saying she's lying. I'm just saying I could see why it would be hard to
press
prove.
To press charges, because how do you win that case when you're like, well, but that's not to say. It is not to say that husbands cannot rape their wives. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm
saying. I just want to make it clear. I'm not saying she's lying.
It is very, very hard, but it can be done. And I hate that they I
hate that they just dismissed it because of the lie detector.
Right. The following year, in 2000, Kimball's violation of probation for an earlier fraud conviction revoked his earlier suspended sentence and put him back in prison in Montana. And so then a year later, in 2021, he absconded. I love that word, absconded, from a halfway house, stole a truck along with the till from his employer, a gas station, where he was on work release. So he stole the money from the gas station, stole the truck, and was off. So his wife was the one that reported him shortly thereafterward. He returned to Spokane, where he broke into her house, kidnapped her, raped her again. She filed charges, and then an arrest warrant was issued. Believe survivors, change the culture. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So at this point, he fled to Alaska, where he posed as his brother, got engaged to another woman.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Telling you.
The fact that he can act normal enough to find women to date and get married is scary, considering what you've said so far. Well, I know it's coming.
Well, yeah. From what everyone has said about him is like, I think like any narcissist, incredibly charming and will be who you want him to be.
Yeah.
He knows how to play people like that. He's very, very smart.
Yeah.
Very smart. And in an interview, one of the FBI agents said he called himself Hannibal. And the thing about Hannibal Lecter in the movies, he's a fictional character, obviously. But in the movies, he was always like 2 steps ahead, and he was. He was always 2 steps ahead from the authorities. He was very smart, and he read people fast enough to know what it was that they wanted, and he could be who they wanted him to be until he couldn't. I mean, you can only be a fake person so long, and then, oh, I made you mad, and now there's a whole thing like, oh, I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, the veneer or the facade wears off and it goes away, and then but you're already in, and somebody's already in love with you, and what do you do? And oh my gosh, this isn't you, and it is him. You know, and it's so difficult, but he was a master manipulator. Okay, so he got engaged to another woman and resumed his career in check fraud, writing $25,000 in forged checks. So he was again arrested, again convicted, and here's where it gets ridiculous. So in 2001, this is around the time he got arrested, he was sitting in federal prison on check fraud charges.
Right.
Big deal. When he pulled off his greatest con yet, he told the FBI that his cellmate was planning to have witnesses murdered and that he had inside information on a criminal organization. You should listen to me because I know shit. So the FBI, desperate for a lead, completely bought it. Not only did they release Kimball from prison early, but they hired him and paid him as an informant.
Did they not do any fact checking on the cellmate?
The FBI literally gave this man permission to move freely across state lines, gave him cash, and trusted him to help them catch bad guys. Meanwhile, Scott Kimball was doing the exact opposite, using his new position to commit even worse crimes, including murder. So,
real quick,
go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry. When he was arrested, did they arrest him knowing that he was Scott or thinking that he was his brother? So he went to jail under his brother's name?
He was in Alaska.
Right. But when they arrested him,
Did
they find out
at
that
Boulder, Colorado?
So they just didn't even check his identity and were like...
They were like, oh, he had this domestic violence thing, and then that got dropped, and then all of like...
My question was like, did they know that it was Scott?
Yes.
Or did they...
No.
Because you said he was going by his brother's name when he got engaged.
No. They knew at this point.
Okay,
Scott
that's
Kimball.
what I was asking.
It was never his brother.
Because you told a story before where they went to jail under a different name and they never fact checked it. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember that story.
So he went as Scott.
He was in prison as Scott.
Okay, got it.
So Kimball had told the FBI that a fellow inmate, Arnold Flowers, was planning to have the federal judge and the prosecutor in his case, along with a witness who had testified in the fraud case against him, killed. And with his help and that of the undercover agent, the Bureau recorded Flowers and his girlfriend making the arrangements with persons whom they believed to be the killers. They were arrested on several felony charges in March of 2002. Are they fighting?
I don't know.
Hey. They're just yelling at each other. They've been angry. What? Come here. You're being loud. Okay. So Kimball then told the FBI that, hey, I can help you with more cases. Another fellow inmate, he said, had boasted about having killed another federal prosecutor, Thomas Wales, in his Seattle area home the year before.
So he wasn't actually lying. The guy his cellmate actually did hire someone to kill the witnesses?
I think he encouraged it and said it. I think he manipulated
Okay,
these people. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's sort of okay. So then for his safety, Kimball was transferred to the low-security Inglewood Federal Prison in Littleton, Colorado. He discreetly let it be known that he had information about planned crimes that FBI agents might want to know about. And soon, the Bureau's liaison to that prison, Carl Schlaff, came to visit him. Kimball told Schlaff that fellow convict Steve Ennis, whom he had befriended, was allegedly plotting to kill witnesses expected to testify in an important trial about Ennis's ecstasy distribution ring. Schlaff had resented at this point. He resented being assigned to Inglewood after working on organized crime investigations. He was like, I was big time, and now I'm talking to Scott fucking Kimball, like, yeah. Right? You know, so he was kind of like pissed off about it. But when he talked to Scott, he considered like, at first he was like, this is not for someone as experienced as I am. He kind of just felt shafted, right? But then Scott's telling him, I have all this information on all these other things. And if Kimball was telling the truth, he saw the possibility for breaking the kind of case that could put him back on the career path he had been hoping for, right? So he was like, you're my golden ticket, dude, right? Oh. So he viewed Kimball as someone who, while he had an answer for everything, he wasn't a violent man and could still earn the trust of a jury as a witness, because it had all been fraud at this point. Oh, no, I went too far. Okay, so due to Kimball's earlier service as an informant, there was still nothing in his file about the rape and the kidnapping charges because he was an informant. So while working as the informant, 4 people mysteriously disappeared between 2003 and 2004. And guess what? They all had one thing in common. Scott Kimball.
Shocking.
Bum, bum, bum. I should play that. I forgot what number it is. Okay. So following his release in 2002 on a $10,000 bond. Isn't that like nothing? Was that $100, $1,000? Yeah. You have to pay 10% or some shit.
Yeah.
Kimball moved in with his mother, Barb, and her partner near Denver, Colorado. And so he began to make money by flipping houses. He set up an organic beef distribution company.
Okay.
Wild.
What an interesting job choice.
I know, with $65,000 from his mother and his brother.
I can't believe they would give him money.
They gave him money. Fraud. This enterprise required him to frequently travel around the state to ranches and cattle auctions in order to buy more product. His ex-wife had also returned to Colorado. She was still afraid of him, but she let him see his sons because he still had that right. The FBI also paid him the first installment in a total of $50,000. And gave him a cell phone with an earpiece for recording.
Wow.
I mean, if you're getting good information from somebody, keep them afloat, right? Like if they're helping you solve cases and put people in jail, okay, right? They had no reason to think that this man was doing anything nefarious.
Except for his records and prison time.
But that had not been put on his record because he was an informant, and then that was given. So, I mean, he was right place, right time, I guess. It's, you know. So over the next 2 years, Kimball killed at least 4 people that he has confessed to, sort of. 3 of them occurred while he was officially an FBI informant. 2 of them were the girlfriends of Inglewood inmates whom he befriended after his release. Another was his stepdaughter. The sole male victim was his uncle. The body of his second victim has not been found, but I'll get to that. So victim number 1 was Leanne Emery, and she disappeared in 2003. She was 24. Leanne was 24 at the time, and she also had a history of struggling with the law. I don't think that's shocking that, you know, a lot of these people like are sort of in that situation. They aren't as like, what's the word? maybe they're more susceptible to his manipulate. Like they're more susceptible to his manipulations because maybe they're not all together or, like down on their luck.
They just want someone who pays attention to them.
And there's just, it's sort of, he wasn't dating them, but he knew where their weak points were. Right. So they were a little bit easier to manipulate than somebody who was, say, like gainfully employed and not addicted to drugs. And
their partners weren't in prison.
Right. So Kimball, posing as her friend, convinced her that he could help her escape her troubled past and help her get a fresh start. He promised her a trip to Mexico, a new life. And of course, she believed him. And, he was, after all, an FBI informant. He would say, I work for the FBI. That was what he would say.
As an FBI informant, you're not supposed to tell people you're an FBI informant.
He wouldn't say, I'm an FBI informant. He would just say, I work for the FBI.
Oh.
I have connections. I work for the FBI.
Oh, okay.
Right? But instead of taking her to Mexico, he took her to a remote area and killed her.
Oh.
I won't tell you what happened to her. I'm not going to go back. So, she was eventually found, like years later. She was eventually found, and it was determined that she had been shot in the head. She had also been, and I'll mention this later, but one of the things she was really hoping to get away, and her boyfriend was Ennis, the one that was in prison with him, and that was his cellmate.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm going to get out and I'm going to help you escape, and I'm going to help her meet you there. So you're going to escape. I'm going to get you guys to Mexico, and you guys are going to start a new life.
Oh.
And so he befriended her, and she was like, do I trust him? And Ennis is like, yes. And she was like, okay. And she kind of didn't get a great vibe off of him, but he was supposed to be helping her. And so she had messaged a friend of hers saying, I'm with someone who calls himself Hannibal. He is not someone to be fucked with. I'm not even supposed to be connecting. Like, I'm not even supposed to be communicating with you.
Yeah.
He said if I did, he would kill me. And so, like, there was fear on her end.
Right.
But she really thought he was going to help her get out of the States, get her boyfriend out of the States, and they would be able to live their life. Because he was on just some stupid drug charge, right?
Yeah.
It was stupid. They were both trying to start their lives all over, and it was stupid. So that was her story. So victim number 2 is Jennifer Markham, and she disappeared February of 2003. So she was 25 at the time. She was an aspiring model, and I'm so sorry. Jennifer Markham was the one in relationship with Steve Ennis. I'm so sorry. Another inmate, I shouldn't have said his name. Another inmate was Leanne Emery's boyfriend.
So the first victim was dating someone else that was
Yes, I am so sorry.
That's
so
okay.
Jennifer Markham was the one. And see, like, this is when I just know the story and I tell you, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I should have been reading my script. So Jennifer Markham was a 25-year-old aspiring model, and she was the one that was dating Steve Ennis, who was a convicted drug dealer. Kimball told the FBI that he was using Jennifer to lure out other drug traffickers, but in reality, it was just luring her to her death. Jennifer was last seen at Denver International Airport, where Kimball claimed he was going to help her meet drug connections, and she never made it out. Never found her. And so for years, Kimball spun different stories about what had happened to Jennifer. He told people she had been killed over a drug deal. He told others that she ran away to California, but they were never able to find her body. And one of the worst parts about that is that he would like call her parents. I know what happened to Jennifer. I can take you to Jennifer. How do you know what happened to Jennifer? How do you know where Jennifer is if you weren't the person who put her there?
And why didn't they arrest him if he was calling her parent?
Because they were like, we have an inside man. The FBI was like, we have an inside man. Maybe he can give you some information. So like they played into his, I get to like fuck with the parents, whatever psycho shit that is, right? Whatever psychopathic desire to hurt the family at that point. They like, oh, our guy, Joe Snitch, and that's where Joe Snitch comes in. Joe Snitch knows what happened. And he's like, yeah, I know what happened to her. Like, I can tell you where she is. And like, but he never would tell them. So where is she? How do you know? How do you know if you weren't there and you didn't do it? How, so like they were calling bullshit right away. They were like, who the fuck are you? Why do you know any of this?
Yeah.
So like there was like so the mom called him and recorded it and was like, if you didn't put her there, how do you know what happened to her? Well, I gave you a chance. I gave you a chance when I first offered, to tell you what happened to her, and you guys didn't take it because they were like, what the fuck? And so they were pissed off. They knew right away, like something's not right. Something's not right with Scott Kimball. All right. So Casey McLeod, this one's heartbreaking. She disappeared August of 2003. It all happened in a very short amount of time.
I was going to say.
So Casey McLeod was only 19. She was the daughter of Lori McLeod, and she does a lot of interviews. And this was sort of like you asked, like, how does he get girlfriends, right? So she was single, and she was at a local casino, and in comes this guy, and he wasn't a bad looking guy. In comes this guy, and he's pushing a wheelchair, and his mom is in the wheelchair, and she's like, oh, look at that doting son with his mom taking her out and whatever. And they pull up to the same blackjack table, and then they all start, everyone at the table was kind of talking, and he mentions he works for the FBI, and that, he works for the FBI. And so they were flirting, and finally the dealer was like, Lori, you're killing him. Just give him your number. And she did. But before she handed it to him, she goes, you're not like a felon or anything, are you? And he goes, Lori, we've been talking. I told you I work for the FBI. And
nice.
So yeah. Nice. And that's how it started. And then it was like this whirlwind kind of romance, and he did all the right things and brought flowers, and their first date was on Valentine's Day, and, just swept her off her feet and kept, she felt safe and all of these things, right? She had this teenage daughter at home, and her teenage daughter, poor thing.
Wait. I thought you said she was 19.
No, this was the daughter of Casey was the 19-year-old.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Lori was the mom.
Okay.
Gotcha. So Lori is like, I have this new boyfriend, and they had started dating serious enough to where, like it was like they were moving in together kind of a thing. Like he was around all the time.
Yeah.
And Casey, bless her heart, Casey was just a really, just a bright and shiny person. She dealt with a lot of issues. She had bipolar disorder, and so she was dealing with her own stuff, and she started to get into drugs as a teenager and had gotten clean. And so she was struggling, right? Yeah. She definitely struggled. She had just gotten a job at a Subway, and she was kind of embarrassed about it. Her dad was like, I don't care what kind of job you have. Yeah. You are earning a living, and it is squeaky clean, and you're doing great, and just keep at it. And like they had kind of gotten used to her bouncing for a while, on a drug binge or whatever, but it hadn't happened. And one day Scott shows up and says to Lori, look what I found. And it was drug paraphernalia, as though it had been recently used. Yeah. And so Lori approaches Casey about it, and, it's like, is this yours? And I think Lori had sort of gotten to the point, and she's like, it wasn't mine, Mom. I swear to God, it wasn't mine. You just have to believe me. It wasn't mine. Yeah. And Lori said, you know what? I think we just have to go to the police. Like, she felt like, if I don't do something, my daughter's going to die. So she goes to grab her purse. She comes back into the room, and Casey had gone. She had taken her bike and she had gone. And so Scott says, I'll go find her. And so he leaves and he goes driving and he finds her, and he comes back and he says, I've put her and her boyfriend up in like a motel, like a Motel 6 or whatever. And, for a while, that was okay. Like when Casey feels like you're not going to turn her in, she'll come back. But like, let's let everything settle down.
Yeah.
You calm down. She doesn't want to,
Yeah.
Don't be an arc. She'll come home. That kind of thing. And the boyfriend was staying there with her, and Scott was picking her up and taking her to Subway to go to work, and that was sort of the deal. And he would pay for the room,
and that was really happening.
And that was really happening because the boyfriend was there, and he would make sure they got fed and the whole thing. So he was kind of taking care of them. And then one day, Casey just vanished, and the boyfriend is like, I swear Scott came to pick her up to go to work. Like, that's what happened. Scott says, I couldn't actually. I left town, and he did. He had left town, and he's like, I couldn't pick her up that day, so someone else had to do it. And the boyfriend was like, I swear it was Scott who picked her up, and he was like, I wasn't around. I didn't pick her up and take her to work that day. I told her I couldn't do it. So he said at that point.
Yeah.
Right. But it had gone, time went on. And it became clear that she was gone.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a drug binge. It wasn't anything like that. So sorry, I can hear all these things happening. So they're at this point living in a sort of limbo, and eventually she was found in a canyon in Colorado, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So then in July of 2004, he also allegedly attempted to kill his son.
Oh my gosh, like his real son.
His real son. So remember, he got married before, and he had the 2 kids. He had 2 boys. And this is a fucked up story. So his son, who was 10 at the time, was out on the farm with his dad and his brother. And it was like late, and they remember thinking, it's kind of late. It's kind of dark out. I wonder what it is that he's trying to get us to do. His brother was sent back into the house, and there was this steel grate. It was a cattle grate. Mm-hmm. Do you know what a cattle grate is?
Yeah, like where they can walk.
They can walk across. So they're real heavy. They're heavy duty. And it was sort of leaning on the truck. So he had a pickup truck, and the grate was leaning on the truck. And his 10-year-old remembers thinking, that's weird. And then his dad gave him a shovel and said to start digging a hole. And then at that point, he's digging the hole, and he goes, okay, baby, just look at the horizon and keep digging. Just do what Daddy tells you. And then next thing he knows, the steel grate falls on him. And it's like a 300-pound grate. But he didn't die. And so his dad got him into the truck. And then on the way to the hospital, his 10-year-old son, Justin, claims that his dad, then going 60 miles an hour, pushed him out of the truck. I am
surprised he survived.
The nurse explained that when he was brought in, his father said that the boy had fallen out of the car. Scott came in and said that Justin had also been hit in the head by a metal grate. And on the way there, Scott said that Justin meant to open the window, but opened the car door instead and fell from the car at 60 miles an hour or 97 kilometers an hour. Scott did not believe Justin would survive.
Please tell me these people at the hospital did not believe Scott. Are you serious right now?
So when she heard
done.
about the incident, Barb went back to her insurance office and changed the beneficiary of the life insurance policy on Justin from Scott to herself. It had recently been changed the other way around. And Scott just a few days prior to this incident, had looked up what the insurance policy on Justin was and who the beneficiary was. And it was him. And so this is why that happened. He would have gotten $50,000 had Justin died.
He was willing to kill his son for $50,000. Wow.
After 2 weeks in an induced coma, Justin survived. And his first words, once he could speak again, were, "Why did Dad do this to me?" He recalled his father dropping the grate on him and then pushing him from the car. And the neurosurgeon treating him said it was possible the injuries had affected his memory. Law enforcement investigated, but since the two injuries had occurred in different jurisdictions, it was unclear which agency should take the lead, and no charges were filed, to the horror of everybody else. I didn't plug in my computer, so I can't play you the clip, but he said, I knew at that time, no one is going to, he knew my father is trying to kill me and no one's going to believe it. He thought he was going to die. And so when he woke up, he was like, this is the first thing I need to tell people. My dad did it.
I cannot even imagine.
Not only did your dad try to kill you, but your dad's a serial killer.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that do to a person?
Yeah.
And he got away with it. He's never been charged. Never been charged. That's probably the most angering thing. No, it's not. But it's there's so many other things. But he was a baby. He was a baby. Those poor boys. And his younger brother, he's like, I can't even talk about that night without crying. And he was just sobbing. He's like, thinking that you lost your brother. And he knew when he saw his dad carrying his brother, he was like, something's not right. And he knew, and he was 8, he knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
Kids know. And then there's Terry Kimball, Scott's own uncle. Terry Kimball came from his home in Alabama, along with his 2 dogs, to assist in Cody's care, the younger brother, while Justin was hospitalized. So they were, the mom was helping and everybody was supposed to be helping Justin. Cody was kind of being left on his own. And so in comes Terry Kimball. So among the possessions he brought along was a briefcase with thousands of dollars in cash that he had withdrawn from a savings account after an earlier divorce. He was a kind and trusting guy who had helped Scott financially before when he was struggling. And of course, this is how he's repaid, by murdering him and trying to steal his identity. So Terry's body wasn't discovered until 2009 when investigators finally started to connect the dots. And he also was found to have a bullet in his skull. In the weeks after Terry had disappeared, Terry's bank had noticed suspicious activity on his credit card and later traced it all to Scott. Scott used his uncle's name to buy 21 head of cattle for almost $12,000. 21 head of cattle, I would have thought would have been more than $12,000.
Well, not just that, but did you really not think that was going to raise a red flag?
The ranch complained to the State Department of Agriculture after Kimball failed to pay. And Terry's bank likewise found that over $23,000 in bad checks had been drawn on his account over 4 months. They reported it to the FBI, but it's not known what action the Bureau took, if any.
Obviously none.
A year after Terry Kimball disappeared, his brother Virgil, Scott's father, received an email from Terry at Yahoo, Terry Kimball at Yahoo.
Nice.
Terry said he was enjoying himself in Mexico and was unlikely to return. And the story that Scott told his wife at the time. So the woman that he met at and see, I'm skipping so much. The woman that he met at the casino, when her daughter went missing, he was like, you know what? We need to get married so that I'll be more helpful because I'm an FBI, I work for the FBI. It'll be more helpful that I'm your spouse because I'll be able to get more information because I'm not related to the girl that's missing. It'll be easier to help you if we're married. And she was like,
stressing me out.
She was like, okay. And so she thought, and then on their honeymoon, he took her to where they found her body.
Like they together found her body? Or like later?
Later, they found her body.
Oh my gosh.
Where he took her on her honeymoon. It had been a year after she disappeared.
This is such a whole nother level of like
and
sick.
It was on her birthday. It's so fucking sick. He was just like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
To make this horrendous. That poor mom.
Yeah.
That poor mom. Because she was like, those drugs probably weren't even hers. He probably set it up for her to go, you know what? It's time. You need to go to prison. You need to find out what it's like, clean up, whatever it is that parents.
I am almost truly surprised he didn't lead the mom to the body for her to find just because of how sick he is.
He's so sick. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like, but I think
I guess it was more fun for him to know that she was there, but the mother not.
100%. Ugh. So gross. There was no further contact with him, but in 2009, they found like his mummified body near Vail, Colorado. Terry. So in 2005, Scott's world starts to unravel. Can't last forever. The fun can't last forever. So the facade starts really breaking apart. So his marriage to Lori McLeod, the mother of Casey, was falling apart. He was at this point traveling and showing little interest in actually being a husband. Mm-hmm. And she was told that he had moved to Alaska, and she kept everything. She kept everything of his, everything of his. Receipts. She kept everything. And she was like, I just packed it up. I didn't look at it again. I didn't look through it. I didn't do anything. I just looked at, just packed it all up. She suspected he was having an affair, but nothing else. Right. And she was right. I mean, she was right. He was having an affair. He was spending more time in California. He was seeing another woman. He had Lori arrested twice for domestic violence, claiming she had attacked him. Lori says those were total fabrications designed to get her out of the way so that he could move his new girlfriend into their home.
Oh my God.
By the fall of 2005, Kimball had moved out. He rented a small house in Lafayette, Colorado, and he convinced his girlfriend at the time, the new girlfriend, to buy him a gun because since he was a convicted felon, he couldn't legally purchase one himself. So she bought him a gun, and it mysteriously disappeared.
But wouldn't she, if you're an FBI agent, wouldn't you be able to get
lots of red flags? Yep, lots of red flags. Lots of red flags.
Okay. Sorry.
She didn't listen to true crime podcasts.
Clearly.
I guess. Serial then? I don't think so. There wasn't. She didn't watch Dateline or Unsolved Mysteries or Forensic Files or American Justice or 48
that's so
hours.
Unfortunate for her that he's so good at manipulating people. So
now you think after literally getting away with murder, Kimball would lay low? No. In January of 2006, an optometrist in Lafayette, Colorado, went to his bank after realizing he hadn't received his latest statement. And what did he discover? $83,000 had been deposited into his business account and $55,000 had already disappeared. Weird. Most of the checks had been written to a beef company owned by Scott Kimball, which conveniently shared an office with his mother's insurance agency. Oh my God. So the optometrist called the police, and detectives reviewed the security footage from the bank, and guess who they saw? Scott Kimball making deposits. So police went to investigate, but big surprise, Scott had already skipped town.
Shocking.
God.
So shocking.
But it wasn't just the bank fraud. Employees at Kimball's mother's office told police that they had seen some of the optometrist's mail on Scott's desk. And when they searched his office, they found practice sheets of forged signatures, fake subpoenas, and even an altered notary stamp from his mom's office. And if that wasn't enough, they also found a trailer he had reported stolen, for which he had already collected $10,000 from the insurance company as a payout.
Was he still officially an FBI informant at this time?
At this point, they were like, no, there's too much going on.
Yeah.
So they sort of unceremoniously had kind of let him go. By March of 2006, Detective Gary Thatcher had had enough. He went to Lori McLeod, Kimball's now ex-wife, and asked her to come in for an interview. And this is where things really started to fall apart for him. Oh no. My mouse stopped working. Okay.
Oh, no.
So at the police station, Lori called Kimball on speakerphone, pretending she was at home in the bathroom. He had no idea that he was being recorded. And during the call, he asked Lori to grab some of his work mail. And after it ended, Thatcher asked, "What exactly does Kimball do for work?" And Lori responded, "He works for the FBI." Oh boy. So right then and there, Thatcher knew something was really, really off. So he suspected Kimball of impersonating an FBI agent as part of his scams. And then Lori dropped another bombshell. She told Thatcher about her daughter, Casey McLeod's disappearance, and her growing suspicions that Kimball was responsible. Thatcher started connecting the dots on his own, and when he reached out to the FBI, they connected him to Agent Joe Schlaff, who had originally handled Kimball's informant case. What was Schlaff's reaction? A sarcastic, "Oh, wow, I'm shocked that our former informant might be committing crimes again." And that's when it clicked. Kimball wasn't just a con artist. He might actually be a serial killer.
Yeah. Wow.
So with the FBI now involved, detectives began building a case against Kimball, and they were preparing an arrest warrant for multiple probation violations. Finally, fucking God, thank you. But then they got a huge break. Kimball's brother, Brett, came forward and admitted that Scott had given him some guns, which was illegal due to Kimball's felony status. And with this new weapons charge, the FBI immediately put out a warrant for his arrest. And they traced Kimball's phone to Riverside, California, where he was living with his girlfriend. This really went all over the country.
Yeah.
And on March 14th, 2006, federal marshals started to tail him as he left his house in his big old pickup truck. And but Kimball realized he was being followed. So he took off. High speed chase alert, everybody. So Kimball sped south out of Riverside, racing through the Coachella Valley toward the Salton Sea. If you know California, you know where I'm talking about. At one point, he called his girlfriend, who begged him to surrender. Begged him, but he refused, telling her, "I know things the police would kill to keep me from telling." Always something. Finally, after 260 miles, that's a long time, Kimball's truck ran out of gas near the tiny farming town of Mecca, California. Cornered and desperate, he threatened to kill himself during a phone call with the FBI, but in the end, he surrendered. After about 3 hours on the run, Scott Lee Kimball was finally in custody. Yay! Okay, so Kimball was extradited to Colorado, where he was arraigned on multiple fraud charges and sent back to Montana to serve time for violating parole. I mean, you have to call every state. Did you have Scott Lee Kimball in your custody?
Yeah.
Seriously. But investigators kept digging, and soon they had proof that Kimball had killed Casey McLeod. When FBI agent Johnny Grusing was investigating potential burial sites, a park ranger told him a hunter had found a human skull in the Route National Forest. A DNA confirmed, like, he just happened to call this forest because of a receipt that Lori McLeod had kept.
My gosh.
That put him there. And they're like, you don't happen to have any like missing persons or any like Jane Does or anything. They're like, actually, yeah. Last year there was a hunter who found a skull up here, and they were like, oh, and sure enough, DNA test, it was Casey McLeod. With physical evidence linking him to at least one murder, prosecutors gave Kimball an ultimatum. So if he revealed the locations of his other victims, they would reduce his sentence. But if he refused, he'd face multiple murder charges and a possibility of the death penalty. So Kimball took the deal.
Of course he did.
In April of 2007, he led authorities to the burial sites of Leanne Emery and to his uncle, Terry Kimball. But when it came to Jennifer Markham's body, he suddenly forgot where he buried her.
That's so weird that he would tell everybody else about her.
Investigators believed he was holding back the information for future bargaining. In October of 2009, Kimball pleaded guilty to 4 murders, and he was sentenced to 70 years in prison. And just like that, the FBI's trusted informant became one of their biggest mistakes. So since Kimball's sentencing, prosecutors and investigators expressed to the media their belief that the 4 murders he pled to were not the only ones he committed. One agent suggested that Kimball could be responsible for anywhere between 21 and 40 plus murders.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe, I'm still stuck on the fact he only got 70 years, but anyways.
That's all they could pin on him, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Why not? I mean, he was old. I mean, why not life? I mean,
yeah.
Anyways. He's going to die in prison. So Lori McLeod had her marriage to Kimball annulled in 2008. Good for her. Did we just say this? I know. At the sentencing, she said that she felt Casey had forgiven him, and thus she was willing to forgive him. Kimball had since remarried to a woman similarly incarcerated in a Kansas prison for child abuse.
Oh my God.
They have never met physically.
Wow.
Theodore Payton, whose sexual abuse of the teenage Kimball led to the suicide attempt that scarred his forehead and, according to Coet, permanently changed him for the worse, died in January of 2017. His body was found outside his Netherlands cabin. The cause was found to be a heart disease with other chronic conditions listed as contributing factors. He served 5 years of the 7-year sentence after Kimball and his other victims came forward, but escaped having to be registered as a sex offender until the late 2000s. And that is my story. Motherfucker's still trying to say he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's still in prison. I don't really want to talk about what he's saying now.
Kudos to the agent that followed up on the receipts and the evidence and actually called places.
Kudos to Lori for keeping the receipts, right?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, so many people keep those things and then the justice system doesn't do anything.
It's what, and he was just like, he goes, if I had called that number a year prior, it would have been nothing. It would have been a dead end.
Yeah.
But the hunter had to find the skull. So when he called, it was like the perfect time.
Yeah.
And asked the right question. And because, I mean, imagine, nobody's been found. And then, gosh. And he said that was just, he goes, I don't know if you want to call it God, luck, whatever. It was, he just called at the right time.
Yeah.
And for Lori to have kept all of that, because it was just a receipt, like she kept everything. And it was like, maybe it's important here, have it all. And, so it was like, they were just trying to find something.
Right.
Something. So, oof.
Did they ever say why they thought he killed like up to 40 people? Like just a hunch, or just the way he said something, or?
I think based on how many states, and you know what, they never said this, but here's my reasoning for why I think that that's possible. Because like Ted Bundy, he was everywhere.
Yeah.
And he did go after people who were, it was unfortunate circumstances.
Vulnerable.
They were vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so like the guy in Alaska, your baker in Alaska, and you're going after people who may not be considered missing by normal standards. But he was in Montana, he was in California, he was in Alaska, he was in Colorado, and just
yeah.
And when they found the bodies, it was out in the wilderness, and he was playing games with the cops, and they were finally like, you know what, he's not going to tell us where she is, so take the deal off the table, send him to prison, and that was that.
Yeah. Well, that was a good story.
I told you you'd get kind of mad about it, though. Yeah.
I mean, I am mad about it, but that was still a good story. I had never heard about it.
I'd never heard of him. Like Hannibal, Joe Snitch. Like, what? The FBI hired this dude? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And he tried to kill his son and his uncle. He killed his uncle. Like, oh my God. It's just like, they called it Operation Snowball, because you can imagine something else, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. It was like a snowball just getting bigger and bigger, rolling down that hill. And so they called it Operation Snowball to get him, because it just put something else, add more snow to that thing, because it was just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I mean, just snowballed. Yeah, that's it. And they are fighting.
They should have their own podcast.
What were they talking? What are they saying right now? Bitch, step back. That's what they're. Who knows?
They're arguing about who's the best support kitty, even though neither one's in here right now.
No, they're mad at each other. They're getting. I don't know. I don't think
siblings.
I think Louis needs to go to the vet. I don't think he feels well. Oh. He's kind of acting funny. Oh. Isn't that funny that we know? Like, they don't talk.
I had to take my poor doggy back to the vet, actually, when this comes out, because of her little broken leg. She's had a broken leg. I don't know if...
I saw...
Well, I don't know if we had an episode.
No, we haven't had an episode.
Yeah, she somehow... They said it was an old fracture, so I think maybe she fractured it, and it kind of healed, and then she jumped on it wrong, like off the couch or something. So she has this little cast, and everyone at the vet office signed it. Like what they do for humans. Oh. And... She's had it changed once, but I gotta take her back Thursday for them to check on it. And
poor little baby.
Yeah, she's so tiny. They're little dogs. So anyway,
hopefully I can take Louis to the vet on Thursday. So yeah, it's gonna be the day that this comes out. We're gonna be at the vet. The day that this comes out,
taking care of our poor little fur babies.
Our fur babies. They're like the best, though.
Yeah, I think. So when I was out of town, there was a crime, it didn't happen while I was out of town, but while I was out of town, I learned about this crime that happened in the town where my brother lives, with a high school girl there. It was a really kind of crazy story, and like they were driving by and they're like, that's where her body was found, and all of this stuff. So I think if I can get enough information to make it an episode, I'm gonna do that, because it's just one of those small towns where nothing ever happens and everyone knows everyone, and
that's
then something
where
crazy
happens.
I know. But I'm going to try to do that story, because it's actually a very interesting story of what happened. And so anyways, and I feel like victims their names should be out there. So anyways, keep her story alive. So that's what I'm going to try to do.
Okay.
And hopefully I'm not congested next week. I might just rip my own sinuses out. Who knows what's going to happen? But
the wizard can fill in for you.
Okay, great.
I wish he would.
Yeah.
I wish he would.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, everybody. Until next week, Take care of yourselves. Gosh, don't get sick.
And if you see something, say something.
If you see something, say something, and just be kind to one another. This is the time to be kind.
Yes.
All right, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.